What is up, all you beautiful people? It is I, AkemiTCG, back here with a brand new video. Okay, so we just finished the remote duel YCS with 1900 players. That's a lot of players. So now I have enough data to conclude on what the top decks in the format are. And just a heads up, a lot of you guys asked me for a lot of these different decks on here. Behind my webcam is actually also more decks, but once you see it filled up, I'll explain each and every single deck. And as a warning, a lot of these decks are in the rogue territory. Anyways, let's get started. With AkemiTCG, I just don't see enough representation with it. Block Dragon is gone. Prank Kids AkemiTCG is still a thing. However, Prank Kids themselves are just a better deck than Prank Kids AkemiTCG, so I'm gonna have to put this on Rogue. It's just an underrepresented deck. Excuse my my English here, but just not a lot of people playing it. Next, with Altergeist, I would still argue because this format is slightly slower. Besides, you know, the Dryton and the Tri-Brigade stuff, Altergeist can still hold a candle to some of these top decks, and Multi-Faker is always going to be wicked annoying to deal with, especially if this Altergeist player is very seasoned and he knows what he's doing. Then the interactions he's going to have, the disruptions he's going to have against you will win out most of the time. Atlanteans, Rogue, not much to say about that. I don't see any representation with this particular deck, so it's going to be in Rogue. With PK, okay, I haven't seen that many Phantom Knight players, to be honest. Level 3 Dante Cherubini Turbo has still been a thing for a long time. A 60 card deck, but in the whole time it's been out, I just haven't seen anybody truly break it to the point where you can put it at tier 2 or tier 1. I always see it as a rogue option, so it's going to be Rogue. With Signet, the Cold Talker stuff, I'm not really too familiar with the Cold Talker deck, but we didn't see really any tops with it. And I'm pretty sure at least one person out of the 1900 players was playing Cold Talkers. Props to you. Or they probably is maybe 20 or 30 people, but not really much representation, so I'm going to put it in the Rogue category. With Shaddolls, as of right now, this format is very Dryton, Tri-Brigade heavy, so Shaddolls just aren't that good this format. Like, straight up, they're okay. Not the best deck, not the worst deck, but with Dryton making a ridiculous board that does negate spells and traps, if you blind second against Dryton and they pop off with the Herald of Ultimateness and you happen to not have Droplet or Dark Ruler no more, it's a bad time, so I'm going to put it in Rogue. With Cyber Dragon, shout out to the dude that got top 64 with Cyber Dragon. You are the GOAT, man. But I don't really see much Cyber Dragon representation. I think it's a really explosive deck. It can easily go into Verte. You can make Cyber Dragon Infinity. You can't be, or rather, you should be afraid of Cyber Dragon Infinity, especially when there's a dedicated Cyber Dragon player. You gotta be real careful, right? However, I would still argue that it's Rogue. I just don't see it as a tier 2 or tier 1 deck. I'm not quite sure what his matchups were, but if he got top 64 out of 1900 people, that's pretty damn good, so props to him. Elemental Heroes are always going to be wicked expensive until the stuff gets reprinted. But pretty much, Elemental Heroes, as opposed to VWs, they make this Dark Law, or they make the Plasma and they pass on it. And if your opponent has Droplet, or even a single Imperm, that can just ruin your day. And especially right now, because Dryton's very, very strong, a lot of people are choosing to main deck Droll and Lockbird. And Elemental Heroes, they have a really, really rough time against Droll and Lockbird. I'm not saying they can't play, but it's going to be very, very, very rough. So that's going to be Rogue still. Orcus, not really much representation, so I'm putting it as Rogue. Dogmatica, Pure, or pretty much any variant, just not that good right now, unfortunately. Compared to the top decks, the deck's just okay. I mean, Nadir is still a card, right? But again, a lot of decks are main decking Droll, and you have to be really, really careful with that. Main decking Droll, or even main decking Lancia for the Tri-Brigade matchup. So it's gonna be rough anyways. for both Dogmatica and also the Alistair variant, Dogmatica Invoke. It's just gonna be rough, very rough. Dragon Maids, as much as I love this deck to death, it breaks way too often for my liking, so I'm gonna have to put it in Rogue as well. Right now, Eldritch has a really tough time in the format just because against Striker just wins 9 times out of 10 because Shark Cannon is just so strong, especially now that we have Engage, that it's going to be staying in the Rogue categories. I never thought I would see the day that would put Eldritch in Rogue, but it's just not that good right now, and times have changed. This format's completely changed everything. People started main decking different options to play around Sky Striker, and then also for Dryton and also for Tri-Brigade too, because Revolt's such a dumb card, and then we'll get into that in a second. Infernobles, I think, are just okay. Deck's alright. Same with Madolche. They can set up a board, and there was a Madolche player that went top 16, so congrats to that person. But I just don't see either of these decks, including Marincess, being outside of Rogue unless it's some game-breaking card. Remember, this is all about consistency. The more consistent a deck is at winning, the more consistent the good hands are versus the bad hands against the rest of the meta. That's what determines whether or not it's going to go to Rogue, Tier 1, or Tier 2. Next is with Dinos. Dinos are just okay in my opinion. I mean, Miss is at 1, so I can put it at Tier 2. And I believe there was one Dino player that got top 16. But there's just really not much representation. And especially if you use the Miss effect and they ash it, that's the only Miss you have for the whole game. And if you don't have Gamma in hand, or if you already have an Oviraptor and you can't resolve your Gamma, then it's actually GG. Most of the time. I mean, you can still play a going second build where you just choke your opponent out really fast. And UCT is a very strong card, so you can't just sleep on Dinos. But with Miss at 1, and also a lot of decks are also maining DD Crow now, it's just a little bit trickier to play the deck. Not a little, a lot trickier. Paleo is going to be Tier 2. You can make a lot of back row, but if you don't have the back row, sometimes you can just draw into all traps, or if you just draw into only the frogs but no traps to support your Toad, it's just not that consistent. If it gets more consistent, I believe it can pull out of Rogue, but as of right now, it's just not that consistent of a deck. When it works, but when it doesn't work, it just straight up doesn't work. Raid Raptors, I don't know too much about them, but there's very little to no representation, so I'm going to put them at Rogue. Sky Striker is going to be Tier 2. I do not believe Sky Striker is a Tier 1 deck, also because it didn't top 16 at all. We do have the Engage back, but it just can't keep up with decks that have, for example, Tri-Brigades that have Revolt. Can't keep up with that. VWs, where they literally need to open one virtual monster to start, going off. A lot of Sky Striker decks, if you don't open the Engage, the Ray, or the Rose, it's very hard to almost impossible to play. So that's why we put Sky Striker at Tier 2. And also, a lot of people were afraid of Sky Striker this format anyways. So that's why they put in a lot of main deck cards for Sky Striker itself. Some with Salamangreats, put them at Tier 2. I'm on the fence. It could be Rogue. I haven't seen what they can do versus this format. I think we got one Salamangreat player, but I'll put it at Tier 2 because, managed to get top 16. We do have Mirage Stelio back, but the deck's just okay right now. Endymion, same idea. With Guru, Dragoon is still a very strong card. It's extremely oppressive, especially with the Guru stuff. You can just have a Solemn Judgment in your hand, so it can work. But a lot of people are also main decking Kaijus right now, so I'm gonna have to put it at Rogue. You have to be very careful for that Kaiju, because Kaijus is good in Striker too, and also good in Virtual World, just practically good and pretty much also against Dryton. Alright, so now Rika's. As a big Rika fan, I can safely say this deck will stay in Rogue, and probably will stay in Rogue for a while, unless we get a game-breaking card. That's not gonna change anytime soon. Same with Time Thieves. Even though we got the new support, it can pop off, but not as hard as people think. With Dragon Link, even without LP, this deck can still work. It can still perform. So that's why I just put it at tier 2. Because we do still have quick launch at 3, so you can still make some plays. We also still have the Dragoonity package that is literally just a free Crystal Wing without the normal summon. And we also still have Chamber. So a deck still works. Absolutely still works. Tri-Brigade. Tier 1. Revolt is such a stupid card. And the fact that you can just hard draw Revolt and still beat up your opponent because you hard drew Revolt, it's a pretty good feeling. It's really, really good. Because some people, they wait to Ash the one that searches Revolt by purposely spaghettiing the chain link order to bait out the Ash, and they're like, oh, I already hard drew Revolt anyways. So you have to be really careful for that. It's just a really, really strong card. And Tri-Brigades just have a ton of recursion, especially when you can just draw Fractal and then like let you pop off. It's just a really, really good deck. With Virtual Worlds, they are tier 1 simply for the fact that they can juke a lot of hand trap. They can juke Imperm, they can juke Valor. It's just really, really strong right now. We don't really have a good enough hand trap to sort of interrupt their on-hand special summons. And Chuchi's a thing, and the deck has extremely good recursion too. So the same boat, these two decks, both Tri-Brigade and VWs, have really, really good recursion. So the decks just work. With Pure Zodiac, I'm going to have to put them at tier 2. We just don't have Dryton. Without Dryton, there's not enough pressure on board. And right now, just having a Zeus just doesn't really suffice in this particular format, unfortunately. Burning Abyss, going to be Rogue as well. Same with Dark Magician, Fluffles, Ogowatic. This Pendulum deck, Sofa Chords. And now we're moving on to the Prank Kids. The reason why Prank Kids are going to be tier 2 is the deck's really strong. There can be only one hurts a lot of decks right now. And the fact that they can main deck it, and the fact that they can just normal summon one monster, link it off, and then pop off with combo is very, very strong and very, very, very powerful. So that's why it's going to be tier 2. It's just not tier 1. Not quite there yet in terms of recursion. And also the deck, like, low-key loses to a Kaiju as well. If you only have one monster. Also loses the Lightning Storm too, by the way. Just a heads up. We got Zombies is going to be Rogue. The deck's just way too slow for this format. Especially when we have all these tier 1, tier 2 decks running around too. Same with Blue Eyes. And then the next tier 1 deck is going to be Dryton. Dryton's extremely, extremely, extremely powerful. If you do not have Droll against Dryton player, you're going to have a really, really rough time. And also, same thing with VWs. You can't Imperm, you can't Valor this stuff. Because when they already have something on the field that can be Imperm or Valor, it's most likely going to be the Herald. And by that point, it's going to be too late. They've already established a board. So it's very, very strong in the sense that it forces pretty much everybody playing to try to main deck Drolls. Just one Ash is not enough against this deck. You have to Droll. You have to stop them from completely playing. And it's quite hard to do. Sometimes, even if you draw them, they can still go off. Just a warning. With Trains, it's going to be Rogue as well. I think I saw somebody in top 64 play the Train deck, so I thought it was, or the Earth Machine deck rather. So I thought that was pretty dope, but I don't know enough about the deck to make a more informed determination on whether or not it should be tier 2. Toons are going to be Rogue, simply for the fact that it's Protect Toon Kingdom. ABC Dragon Buster deck's really cool. You can make the I believe it's the Link 5 Niharu, the goddess of the underworld, but other than that, it's just a little bit too slow against the tier 1 and tier 2 decks. Same with Malphite. Ojamas, we gotta put it there for the trolls, we gotta put it there for the memes. Ojama's gonna be tier Rogue. Witchcrafters, same idea. Armed Dragons, just minus city. Ancient Warriors can actually OTK pretty darn fast if you're unprepared for that. That actually happened to me recently at a local, so be careful with Ancient Warriors. Still gonna be Rogue though. Crusadias have a amazing matchup against Sky Strike, you literally just Lightning Storm their back row, Kaiju, and then attack for game. But still Rogue. Thunder Dragons, we don't have Colossus back, so it's going to be Rogue. I would argue if Colossus came back, this deck could definitely be tier 2. There's no question about it. Ignisters are very, very powerful right now, especially with the new common support that we got in the recent set. You don't want to sleep on this deck. It's extremely powerful. And they can make that Link 6 like nothing. And that card's unaffected by card effects, and it's big, okay? So be really careful against this deck. Because in 1 second, in a blink of an eye, you're going to lose the duel if you're not careful against AIs. So Navalon is going to be Rogue as well. Same with Trap Tricks, even with the new support. I feel like Trap Tricks just brick way too often for me to put it in tier 2. And then same with just the Pendulum deck. I know this is pretty much the Stratos for the deck, but it's just a little bit too slow now compared to, you know, tier 2, 2, 1. Especially since Joker was king during Pendulum format too. We had the 5 back row plus the 2 Pendulum zones, but we just don't have that anymore. Anyways, that is it for the video. Hope you all enjoyed. Feel free to put your opinions down below. Pretty much the most important stuff are going to be tier 1, tier 2. I understand this would be a bit controversial because it just feels so weird where I put Shadow's tier 1, Elvish tier 1, and all of a sudden in this new format, they're just not nearly as good. Just because these 3 decks are so oppressive. They're so powerful. I doubted the strength of Dryton the first time I saw the Mew Beta Fafnir, but then I played against it and I understood. The Beta Fafnir made this deck so strong, paired with the Diviner, that it's undoubtedly tier 1. And with VW, they just juke all the Effect Veiler and Imperm. Literally, if you have Effect Veiler, Imperm, Ice Dragon's Prison against Dryton, it does absolutely nothing. It just sucks. It sucks. And then, obviously, Tri-Brigade, the Revolt Searcher, makes the deck extremely strong. And also, obviously, Revolt itself. Hope you all enjoyed. My name is AkemiTCG. I'll see you guys next time.
The world ends now.